The year was 1856, and the village of Smiljan slept beneath a blanket of brooding clouds. The summer air was thick with the scent of wild plum and burning wood, the silence punctuated by the rhythmic chirping of crickets, unaware of the storm that brewed in the heavens. As night descended, thunder rolled in from distant hills, slow and solemn, like the footfall of invisible giants. The villagers drew their shutters and whispered old prayers. But in one small stone cottage near the edge of the forest, a woman labored through the storm. Her name was Nikola Tesla. She bore the weight of both pain and prophecy as lightning cracked the sky in jagged brilliance. Each flash lit the room like a lantern from beyond, revealing her calm determination despite the chaos outside. Just before midnight, as thunder roared with primal force, her child emerged into the world. A brilliant bolt of lightning split the sky in two, and the midwife gasped. "He will be a child of the storm," she whispered. But Duca, breathing steadily, wiped her brow and looked into the baby's wide, shining eyes. "No," she said softly, her voice gentler than the rain that began to fall. "He will be a child of light." And so Nikola was born. From his earliest days, there was something different about him. He would lie awake for hours, eyes tracking the stars as if reading silent messages from the void. He would reach toward metal objects as if sensing vibrations through the air, and he spoke of sounds that no one else could hear. He was drawn to water wheels and windmills, fascinated by motion and force. In his quiet village, where most boys were taught to farm and pray, Nikola dreamed of harnessing invisible powers. He built small contraptions out of wood and string, spinning wheels powered by the stream, coils that whirred with the breeze. His fingers moved with purpose far beyond his years. He once spent days trying to mimic the purr of wind through branches using only blades of grass and copper wire. But it wasn't just his hands that worked magic, it was his mind. He saw patterns in everything, the spin of a wheel, the flicker of firelight, the cadence of bird wings. He would close his eyes and see swirling visions of machines he hadn't yet built. His imagination was not fanciful, it was mechanical, vivid, precise. He spoke often of light, not sunlight, but a different kind. A light that whispered, hummed, pulsed in the bones of the earth. He had a cat named Macaque, a sleek black creature with white paws. One winter's night, as he stroked the cat's back, a spark jumped from the fur to his finger. The jolt startled him, but what followed was not fear. It was fascination. He repeated the gesture again and again, marveling at the crackle of energy. "Is this," he asked his mother, "what the stars are made of?" She didn't know how to answer, but she remembered the night of his birth, the lightning, the light, and said simply, "Maybe, my son. Maybe." He would later recall that spark as the first moment he met electricity, and from that moment on, he was never the same. The villagers said he was strange, the other children called him odd, but his mother only smiled and told him, "When the world doesn't understand you, it's because you're building something it's never seen." And so, Nikola kept dreaming. He dreamed of towers that reached the clouds, of cities lit without flame, of voices that traveled without wires. But long before he built a single machine, he carried the most powerful one of all inside him, a mind born in lightning, a spirit drawn to light, a boy whose dreams would one day change the world. Before Nikola Tesla could walk, before he knew the names of stars or the language of numbers, he listened to his mother's hands. Her name was Nikola Tesla, and though she never attended school, she knew how to make things sing. In the small candlelit home they shared with the rhythms of the earth, wind through the chimney, rain on the roof, fire in the hearth. Duca crafted tools with a kind of quiet genius that left its mark on everything, especially her youngest son. She was no ordinary woman. In an age when most women were expected only to mend socks, hush babies and boil bread, Duca did something more. She invented. With thread and thimble, with bone and wire, with no books and no instructions, she made things work. And not just work beautifully. She built mechanical looms from old wood and farm parts. She stitched designs into garments that told stories. She could repair a broken lock with a bent nail and a shoelace. She carried entire devices in her head, recalling not just how they looked, but how they moved, sounded, behaved. Nikola sat beside her on the woven rug while she worked, watching her fingers flutter like moths in lamplight. She rarely spoke when she was deep in design. She didn't need to. Her hands had their own vocabulary. Click, pull, wrap, knot, slide, tighten. And in that quiet workshop of clay walls and oil lamps, young Nikola learned his first and greatest lesson. Invention is not born in thunder. It arrives in rhythm. Click, slide, adjust, test. His father, Milutin, was a stern priest who believed in order, ritual, scripture. But Duca, she believed in movement, in mystery, in creating what no one else could see. At night, while the wind whispered across the fields and the sky spilled stars across the ceiling, Duca would sit by the stove and tinker with a piece of leather or tin. And Nikola, half asleep under a sheepskin blanket, would whisper into the dark, "I think the stars are machines." And she, without pausing her stitching, would say, "Maybe they are, my son. Maybe they are." She never discouraged him. Not when he spoke of invisible wheels, or lights without flame, or horses made of air. She didn't always understand what he meant, but she understood that he meant something. She had visions too, of how to fix a broken coffee grinder, of how to make soap last longer, of how to make a tired hand's work easier. She knew what it meant to see the inside of a thing without taking it apart. And Tesla inherited that from her, not her skills, but her sight. Later in life, he would say, "My mother understood the secrets of the universe without ever reading a book." He credited her with his imagination, his discipline, and his deep reverence for silence, because it was in silence that Duca created, not with applause or reward, but with focus, with love. She made things not because she sought fame, but because they needed making, because the world, in all its stubborn beauty, was full of small broken places, and her hands knew how to heal them. And Nikola, in the flickering glow of those quiet Serbian evenings, grew to understand that invention was not just the work of wire and coil. It was the gentle art of listening, of noticing, of building something new because the world asked for it. His mother taught him that. She never built an oscillator, never drew a blueprint, never filed a patent, but she gave the world Nikola Tesla. And in doing so, she created the greatest invention of all. Nikola's dreams were never ordinary. They did not wait for nightfall or sleep. They arrived unannounced, flickers of light behind his eyes, glowing diagrams suspended in the air, machines of spinning copper and pulsing force that no one had yet conceived. As a boy, he believed everyone saw the world this way. He assumed all children could close their eyes and summon a wheel, watch it spin with invisible magnets, reverse its direction, and test its limits without lifting a single tool. But soon he learned that his mind was not like the others. While his classmates laughed in the sun and played with sticks and stones, Nikola sat beneath trees, tracing equations into the dirt with his finger, talking to the wind as if it were a partner in design. He once stared at a waterfall for hours, murmuring to himself about harnessing its power, wondering if water could be tamed into light. These thoughts didn't frighten him. They nourished him. His parents, especially his father Milutin, had other plans. They wanted him to join the clergy, to study language, to preach. But Nikola's scripture came from science. When his father finally allowed him to pursue formal education, it was like oxygen to flame. At the Higher Real Gymnasium in Karlovac, Tesla discovered mathematics, and it was not a subject, it was a song. Numbers unfolded in his mind like symphonies, each digit a note, each equation a chord. He could solve problems without writing them down. He would read entire books and recite them word for word. He visualized complex structures in 3 dimensions, rotating them in space, testing their strength in silence. He frightened some of his teachers. They had never seen a student who finished their lessons before they'd been taught. After Karlovac, he studied electrical engineering at the Polytechnic Institute in Graz. There, he first encountered a lecture on a Gram dynamo, a type of generator that could also function as a motor. But something about its design bothered him. It used commutators, mechanical switches that sparked and degraded. He saw in his mind a motor that required no such thing, a motor that spun not by interruption, but by rhythm, by alternating current. He became obsessed. His studies deepened into near mania. He worked 18, sometimes 20 hours a day. He barely ate, slept little. He would be found pacing the halls at midnight, muttering sequences under his breath. The visions came stronger now. He began seeing flashes of light, bright, intrusive, covering his field of vision. With them came full systems, turbines, coils, magnetic engines. They weren't hallucinations. They were models, detailed, exact, interactive. His professors didn't know what to make of him. Some thought him brilliant, others unstable. Tesla once said, "When I get an idea, I start at once building it up in my imagination. I change the construction, make improvements, and operate the device in my mind. It is absolutely immaterial to me whether I run my turbine in thought or test it in my shop." He saw no difference between mind and machine. Both could be tuned, both could be perfected. After Graz, he moved briefly to Prague. There he found more solitude than support. But the ideas kept coming. He would walk for miles, speaking to himself in languages few understood, pausing at bridges or in alleyways to sketch invisible motors in the air. He told one classmate he could feel electromagnetic waves in his skin. He described rotating fields before the concept existed. By the time he left Europe for America, he had already built 6 engines, not with tools, but with thought. He carried only 4 cents in his pocket, a book of poetry, and a letter of introduction to Thomas Edison. But more importantly, he carried a mind that lit up in silence, a mind that needed no rest to dream, a mind that saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. Before Nikola became the boy who whispered to stars, he was the younger brother who walked in a giant's shadow. His name was Dane, graceful, brilliant, and golden. The firstborn son of Milutin and Nikola Tesla. He was everything a family in a quiet Serbian village could hope for. Eloquent, strong, clever with animals, and kind to strangers. Nikola adored him. He followed Dane through the fields like a shadow, trailing behind as he ran through tall grasses, climbed trees without fear, and solved arithmetic puzzles faster than the adults could pose them. When Dane read, Nikola listened. When Dane drew, Nikola copied the strokes in the dirt. He didn't just look up to his brother, he wanted to be him. And then one afternoon, The light dimmed. It began with a horse. Spirited, wild, unsettled. Dane climbed onto its back, as he had done many times before. But something was different this time. The wind was tense, the birds silent. A sudden jolt, a buck, a fall. Nikola would never forget the sound of his mother's voice that day, or the strange stillness that followed. Dane did not survive. He was only 12. Nikola was 5. They said he was too young to understand. But grief is not measured in years. It's measured in echoes. The house changed. Laughter became rare. Meal times became silent, and the light in his mother's eyes grew softer, as if wrapped in fog. His father tried to carry on, strong, stern, measured. But even he, in moments of solitude, would pause his sermons and stare at the space Dane used to sit. And Nikola, the small boy with wild eyes and quiet feet, began to dream differently. He spoke of seeing Dane in corners, of sensing a glow near his bed at night. He told his mother, "I think he left something for me." She brushed his hair and said, "Then hold it gently." From then on, Tesla's dreams grew stranger. He began to speak of time as if it could be folded, of people as vessels of energy, of the air holding memories we could not see. He once told a neighbor he could hear the thoughts of birds. When asked why, he simply said, "Because my brother taught me how." That loss, quiet, formative, invisible to outsiders, never left him. He carried it like a stone in the pocket of his mind, heavy but close, never spoken of directly, but felt in everything he pursued. Some believe Dane's death drove Tesla to chase the unseen, to map the intangible, to make sense of a world that could vanish without warning. And maybe they were right. Maybe in every tower he dreamed, he was trying to build a bridge across worlds, not just across oceans or continents, but across that great divide between here and there, between the living and the lost. Later, when asked why he was never married, Tesla said he had no room in his heart, that his mind was already married to his work. But perhaps it was also spoken for by a boy named Dane, whose story ended too soon, but whose light flickered quietly in every spark Nikola would ever bring to life. The year was 1884. The ocean sighed under a heavy sky as Nikola Tesla stepped off the ship in New York City. He had no money, just 4 cents, a few clothes, a notebook filled with impossible ideas, and a mind that pulsed with lightning. The city crackled around him, steam from manholes, iron tracks, horses and wagons carving through muddy streets. It was alive with ambition, grime and promise. Tesla, tall and solemn, wandered the unfamiliar chaos with quiet awe. He clutched a letter of introduction to Thomas Edison, the wizard of Menlo Park, the man who had already brought light to parts of the city using direct current. And so, like a character from a myth stepping into the realm of kings, Tesla went to Edison. He was hired quickly. At first, Tesla worked tirelessly on Edison's machines. He improved motors, refined generators, solved problems no one else could. He stayed up for days, running wires through his fingers like silk, feeling their hum, their warmth, their flaws. But there was a fundamental difference between them. Edison believed in trial and error, in building, breaking, trying again. Tesla believed in precision, in theory, in building machines first in the mind. And there was something else. Tesla believed direct current was flawed. It was limited, short-ranged, inefficient. He had a better idea. Alternating current. Electricity that didn't crawl forward like a stream, but pulsed back and forth like breath. He explained it, demonstrated it. Edison dismissed it. Dangerous, he said. Untrustworthy, un-American. Tesla worked for months on Edison's systems. Edison, amused, once joked that if Tesla succeeded, he'd give him $50,000. Tesla succeeded. When he asked for payment, Edison laughed. "You don't understand our American humor," he said. Tesla quit. Alone again, he dug ditches to survive, burying wires beneath the very city he once hoped to electrify. And still, the vision pulsed within him. Then came Westinghouse, George Westinghouse, an engineer and businessman who saw the brilliance in Tesla's ideas, not just the madness. He bought Tesla's patents for alternating current, gave him royalties, support, and most importantly, belief. Together, they began to rewire the world. But Edison did not go quietly. Thus began the War of the Currents. Edison launched a campaign to scare the public. He electrocuted animals in public displays, dogs, horses, even an elephant, to show the dangers of alternating current. He lobbied lawmakers, slandered Tesla, built the electric chair using AC current to prove its deadly nature. But Tesla didn't fight back with fear. He fought back with wonder. He stood in public halls before curious crowds, dressed in a black suit and white gloves, holding tubes that glowed without wires. He walked through arcs of electricity, his body alive with silent lightning, and people gasped. In 1893, at the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, Tesla and Westinghouse lit the entire fair with alternating current. Hundreds of thousands of light bulbs, no flicker, no smoke, just pure, clean illumination. It was a miracle, a cathedral of radiance. The night itself transformed. Tesla didn't stand in the spotlight. He walked quietly through the glowing city, watching others smile in the light he had conjured. Later, he fulfilled another dream. He harnessed the power of Niagara Falls. Water turned turbines. Turbines created electricity. Electricity flowed miles away to Buffalo and then to the world. He had turned water into light. The dream was now reality. But Tesla did not stop there, because for him, light was only the beginning. There were still whispers in the current, still dreams in the ether, and he was listening. In the years that followed his triumph with alternating current, Tesla became something more than an inventor. He became a sorcerer of the invisible. He no longer stood merely behind workbenches. He stepped onto stages, theaters and lecture halls filled with people, drawn not by music or drama, but by the promise of something stranger. A man who could summon lightning from his fingertips. They came wearing bowler hats and corsets, gripping opera glasses and programs, expecting a lecture on electrical phenomena. What they received was something closer to a dream. Tesla would step into the glow of gaslight, tall, pale, dressed in black. His eyes gleamed, not with pride, but with that distant, inner fire. He would raise his hands, and suddenly the room would go dark. Then, with a gesture, a hum would begin, soft at first, like bees waking in a distant hive, then louder, warmer, closer, and then light. Coils would crackle. Blue arcs would leap across the stage. Lamps would glow in his open palms, bright as moons, yet without wires, without fuel, without fire. Children gasped. Women covered their mouths. Men stood dumbstruck as Tesla walked unharmed through bolts of living current. It was not a trick. It was not illusion. It was electricity, tamed by a man who treated it not as a force to be feared, but as a friend he had known since childhood. He did not yell or boast. He rarely smiled. He simply demonstrated, then bowed and let the silence explain the rest. At one exhibition, he illuminated phosphorescent bulbs that had never been connected to any circuit. He called them cold light. He showed how electricity could pass through his body without harm if tuned properly. He rotated magnetic fields in front of wide-eyed crowds, making metal cylinders spin without contact, as if the very air had been enchanted. Some whispered he had harnessed magic. Others claimed he was not of this earth. But Tesla said only, "I am revealing nature's laws." For him, science was not cold or clinical. It was art. It was elegance. It was the music of the cosmos, played through copper and coil. He believed his demonstrations would awaken something in people, a sense of awe, of curiosity, of peace. He once said, "The scientists of today think deeply instead of clearly. One must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane." And so, he offered clarity, not in equations, but in wonder. After his exhibitions, some audiences applauded wildly. Others sat in stunned silence, their eyes filled with new questions, their hearts somehow lighter. Tesla always left the stage the same way, quietly, without fanfare, his coat trailing behind him like a shadow. And outside, beneath the stars, he would whisper to himself, "It is only the beginning." After dazzling the world with light, Tesla turned his gaze towards something greater, something grander than lamps or motors, grander even than the war of currents he had just won. He no longer dreamed of illuminating cities. He dreamed of connecting the planet. He envisioned a world without wires, a world where voice, image and power flowed invisibly, leaping from towers across oceans, from mountaintops to desert homes, through air, earth and thought. He called it the World Wireless System. He said, "The earth is a conductor. The sky is a mirror. There is no distance in vibration." And so he began to build. On the northeastern edge of Long Island, in a quiet stretch of land near the sea, he laid the foundation for a tower unlike anything the world had ever seen. Its name was Wardenclyffe. The structure rose like a steel-limbed tree, topped with a great copper dome, its shape reminiscent of a mushroom or a mechanical fruit from a distant future. Beneath it, Tesla dug deep. Tunnels, shafts, and chambers coiled with cable, not for storage, but for resonance. He believed the earth itself could carry current, that a signal, if tuned properly, could travel not just through air, but through the very bones of the planet. He walked the grounds in long coats and soft shoes, murmuring to himself about frequency, about power harvested from the ionosphere, about healing through vibration. To outsiders, the tower was a curiosity. To Tesla, it was a cathedral. But Tesla was not wealthy, and his ideas, though visionary, were not easily monetized. He had one major investor, J.P. Morgan, and Morgan asked a simple question: "Where do you put the meter?" Tesla had no answer. He believed energy should be free. He believed the future should be shared. But financiers didn't fund dreams. They funded profit. Soon, the money stopped. The workers left. The tower stood half-finished, tall and hollow. News articles began to mock him. They called it Tesla's folly. They said he was chasing ghosts. But Tesla still believed. He wandered the grounds each night, touching the tower's frame, listening for whispers from the earth, from the stars. He refused to give up. Even as dust settled on his desk and unpaid bills stacked high, he insisted he was close, so close, to something world-changing. But the world wasn't listening. In time, creditors came. They seized the property. The tower was decommissioned, then dismantled, its dome sold for scrap, its steel bones torn from the earth. Tesla watched from a distance. He said nothing. No public protest, no angry letter, just silence. The silence of a dream folding in on itself. Years later, someone asked him what he had felt as they destroyed the tower. he replied softly. It's not the structure that matters, it's the principle. The Earth is still waiting. And he was right. Today, Wi-Fi flows through invisible airways. Satellites beam signals across oceans. Voices travel without wires, and light bends across the sky. Tesla saw it all. He saw it not as magic, but as harmony. A universe made of rhythm, waiting to be tuned. Wardenclyffe may have fallen, but the dream still rises. Even after the tower fell, after the papers called him mad, after investors turned away and the world moved on. Tesla did not stop listening, because he had never been chasing applause. He had always been chasing the hum. He wandered through his quiet rooms at the Waldorf, at the St. Regis, at the New Yorker Hotel, carrying notebooks filled with scribbled numbers and spiraling sketches. In those pages were machines no one had yet seen. Coils shaped like blooming flowers, oscillators that pulsed like heartbeats, beams of force, and plates that vibrated with strange, healing resonance. He no longer cared to build them all. Sometimes it was enough to imagine, because in his mind, the machines lived. He once told a reporter, "I do not build to test. I build in thought. I can run the entire device in my mind, observe its wear, its heat, its vibration, without ever touching a tool." And the visions only deepened. He spoke of sending images across the air, moving pictures without film or wire. He described transmitting voices across the globe, with no wires, no delay. He envisioned machines that hovered, propelled not by wings or rotors, but by fields of silent energy. He told friends he had built a small oscillator that nearly brought down his own building. It shook the walls, rattled the pipes. Neighbors thought it was an earthquake. He destroyed it with a sledgehammer before anyone could examine it. When asked why, he said only, "They're not ready." He drew diagrams of flying discs, years before science fiction would imagine such things. He said he received signals from space. He believed he had heard something, faint, rhythmic, intelligent. Others laughed. He didn't mind. He had always been tuned to a station that others could not hear. He believed the brain was a receiver, that thoughts came from a universal source, that we were not separate, but connected by frequency, like stars singing the same silent song. He avoided physical touch. He counted his steps. He could not bear round jewelry. He swore by the number 3. And yet, beneath the eccentricities, was a man who saw more clearly than most. He believed vibration was everything. That emotion had a frequency. That harmony could heal the human body. He believed music and light came from the same source, just translated into different tongues. And perhaps he wasn't wrong. Tesla spoke of a world vibrating with intelligence, of thoughts that rippled through the ether, of energy that obeyed laws we had yet to discover. They called him a madman, but maybe, just maybe, he was whispering to something real, something waiting. He spent his days feeding pigeons, writing letters to the future, and sketching the architectures of invisible forces. He wasn't trying to invent new things anymore. He was trying to understand the deepest rhythms of reality. And if you listen closely, sometimes, in the pauses between sentences, in the space between one breath and the next, you could almost hear it too. The electric hush, the unstruck note, the silence before the light. He had not stopped dreaming. He had simply begun to dream deeper. The world moved on. Cities grew taller. Radio spoke across oceans. Automobiles thundered down paved streets, and names like Edison, Marconi, Ford filled the pages of history. And Nikola Tesla faded quietly into the background, not because his work had failed, but because the world forgot the hands that had lit it. In the final decades of his life, Tesla drifted from hotel to hotel across Manhattan. From the Astoria to the Waldorf to the New Yorker, he became a familiar but quiet presence. A tall, elegant man with a faraway gaze and a mind full of numbers. He paid his rent when he could. When he could not, he paid with promise. An invention, he'd say, worth millions. I only need a little time. The clerks would nod politely, not knowing they stood before the man who had taught electricity how to sing. His daily rituals grew peculiar. He demanded clean linens every night. He refused to touch hair. He polished silverware with napkins for precisely 18 minutes. He calculated the volume of soup before tasting it. And always, he walked up and down Central Park, slow, steady steps, counting as he went. 3, 6, 9. He said those numbers held the secrets of the universe. But he was not alone. Each day, pigeons would gather at his window. Some perched on the sill. Others flew beside him on his walks. There was one, a white pigeon, he loved more than the rest. She would arrive every morning, as if summoned by a frequency only they could hear. He fed her from his palm, spoke to her gently, watched her eyes. She understood me, he said, and in a quiet interview, he admitted something few could understand. I loved that pigeon, as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, my life had purpose. He said she visited him in dreams. That one night, she came surrounded by radiant light, a beam brighter than any lamp he had ever built. He knew then she had died, and with her, something inside him quietly dimmed. Yet Tesla did not despair. He did not curse the world that had forgotten him. He continued to write, to sketch, to dream. He penned letters to the future, proposed inventions to no one in particular. He wrote essays about peace, about the nature of consciousness, about a world powered by harmony, not conquest. And when the time came, on a winter day in January 1943, Nikola Tesla passed quietly in his sleep in room 3327 of the New Yorker hotel. No thunder, no applause, just the soft hum of the city outside the window and the silence of a man who had given all his light. He left no heirs, no fortune, no grave known to most. But he left something else, ideas, dreams, and a glow that never truly faded. Time passed. Years folded into decades. The light stayed on, but the world forgot the man who had first shown them how to shine. Nikola Tesla's name faded from the headlines. His inventions were used, but his story was buried under noise. Whispers of madness, rumors of failure, fragments of truth scattered like sparks in the wind. And yet, his legacy did not vanish. It hummed beneath the silence. Every city that glows with alternating current, every radio that crackles to life, every motor that spins with hidden breath, they carry his fingerprints. He had lived in shadows, but he left behind light. Over time, the world began to remember. Engineers dug into old patents. Scientists uncovered his journals. Dreamers traced the lines he had drawn long before their time had come. His name began to rise again, first in whispers, then in reverence. Today, his vision lives in wires and waves, in skyscrapers lit by invisible force, in vehicles powered without flame, in satellites orbiting Earth with silent confidence. His name rides on electric cars. His coils light music festivals. His image graces murals, comic books, currencies. But his true legacy lives not in machines but in minds, in every person who dares to imagine what no one else can see, in every inventor who asks, what if? In every child who stares at a star and wonders, could that be a kind of energy? Tesla showed us that the future was not something we waited for. It was something we built. He showed us that light is not just a phenomenon, but a language. That silence holds patterns. That the universe is not chaotic. It is musical. And maybe, if we listen closely, we can still hear him. In the hush of a room before the lights flicker on. In the buzz of a transformer on a rainy street. In the feeling of static when you touch a doorknob and wonder why. He is there, not as a ghost, but as a frequency, a current, a pulse. He once said, "The present is theirs, the future, for which I have really worked, is mine." And he was right. His future is now, and yours, dear dreamer, is still unfolding, lit quietly by the torch he once carried. Close your eyes. Let the hum of his legacy wrap around you. Let the current cradle you. You are part of the circuit now, a child of light, just like him. Sleep well. Not all of Tesla's inventions were born into daylight. Some lived only in whispers, in sketches, in pages that disappeared from drawers, or into archives stamped classified. He held over 300 patents across dozens of countries, on motors, turbines, coils, currents, transmission systems. But these were only the visible ones, the ones we can still find, folded in faded folders, stamped with dates and diagrams and dreams. What are the rest? What are the notebooks he kept close to his chest? What are the experiments no one was allowed to witness? What are the ideas he never wrote down? Because even language seemed too clumsy to contain them. After his death, officials entered his hotel room, room 3327 of the New Yorker. They found his belongings, suitcases of scribbled notes, boxes of coils and copper, and journals filled with symbols no one could decipher. Much of it was taken by government agents, by security officials, by those who feared what might lie within. The files were labeled under an obscure code, property of alien property custodian. Though Tesla was a US citizen, his work was treated as dangerous or unknown. To this day, some of those documents remain locked away. Some were lost. Some, perhaps, were never meant to be found. There were rumors of particle beams, of energy weapons that could stop armies from miles away. He called one idea a peace ray, not for war, but for deterrence, to end conflict by rendering it impossible. There were sketches of flying machines, powered not by fuel, but by force fields, shaped like discs, gliding silently. He wrote of extracting energy from the surrounding air. No wires, no coal, no fire, just vibration and careful tuning. Was it possible? We may never know. But Tesla once said, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence." Perhaps his lost patents were not failures, but messages to a future more prepared to understand them. He didn't care about ownership. He didn't chase riches. He once remarked, "I don't care that they stole my idea. I care that they don't have any of their own." For Tesla, the idea itself was sacred. The dream mattered more than the name attached to it. And so, many of his inventions, real or imagined, now float in the ether of speculation. Are they lost, or simply waiting for us to remember? Maybe the real inventions were never just machines. Maybe they were invitations to wonder again, to build not for profit, but for possibility. And perhaps someday, someone will open an old trunk, decipher a forgotten sketch, and hear a hum in the silence, Tesla, calling across time with one more idea. In the last quiet years of his life, when applause had faded and the world rushed past without him, Nikola Tesla found companionship not in people, but in something gentler, feathers, wings, a white pigeon. Each morning, she would visit his hotel window. Not just any pigeon, but a singular radiant presence, pure white, eyes like polished amber, wings that shimmered in the morning sun. He fed her carefully from his own hand, spoke softly, using no words. She listened with stillness. She came when he called. In her presence, Tesla felt understood. She came to me whenever I called her, he told a friend. I loved that pigeon, as a man loves a woman. As long as I had her, my life had meaning. They say he spoke of her light, that she glowed one evening with a brilliance unlike anything he had seen, and in that glow, she told him she was dying. She passed soon after. And Tesla, he said a part of him dimmed forever. To some, it sounded strange, unscientific, sentimental. But for Tesla, it made perfect sense. He believed everything vibrated, that all beings, all thoughts, all souls were connected by frequency. The pigeon was not just a bird. She was a companion on the same frequency, a cosmic echo of kindness, mirrored in wings and soft coos. He watched the way she tilted her head, the way she landed with perfect grace, the way she paused before taking flight, as if calculating wind, time, and destiny. She reminded him of his early visions, of patterns in the stars, of dreams that had no words. Perhaps the pigeon was Tesla's last invention, not built of wires or coils, but discovered in the quiet space between loneliness and love. She became his muse, his confidant, his final connection to a world that no longer asked for his light. And when she left, he did not replace her. There was no second pigeon, no attempt to replicate the bond, because Tesla, more than anyone, understood that some frequencies only play once. Her absence left silence, but not despair, only stillness. And in that stillness, Tesla seemed to drift further into the unseen, into dreams of light beyond form, of energy beyond use, of a universe stitched together by invisible harmony. He once said, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists." Perhaps the pigeon, in her purity and peace, was a messenger from that core. A brief, bright glimpse of its silent love. Even as the world called him forgotten, Tesla never stopped writing. Not for newspapers, not for glory, but for someone he believed would one day listen. He wrote letters in longhand, on yellowed paper, with ink that flowed like the currents he once commanded. And though he addressed no envelopes, he knew his words had destinations. Not in space, but in time. He was speaking to the future, to minds not yet born, to inventors, thinkers, and quiet dreamers who would one day read between the lines and understand what he had tried to say. He scribbled equations alongside poetry. He sketched machines that hummed with stars. He described forces that no one yet believed in. He wrote not with certainty, but with longing. A wish that someday someone would pick up his forgotten thread. He imagined a world where energy was free, where borders dissolved into vibration, where light healed instead of burned. He wrote of peace, of harmony, of a future where understanding replaced war, where sound cured illness, where humanity was no longer deaf to the music of the universe. "I am ahead of my time," he said. And he was. He saw towers that could speak across continents. He dreamed of devices that fit in a coat pocket and connected the globe. He imagined artificial intelligence, machines that could learn, that could think, that could help. He envisioned the earth as one body, with invisible veins carrying thought, power, and hope. And in many ways, he was right. The world caught up, slowly, clumsily, but undeniably. Today, we text across oceans. We carry libraries in our hands. We light cities without flame. We speak to machines, and they speak back. But Tesla, he was already there, long before us. He had sent us messages wrapped in copper, in drawings, in silence. And now we find them, one by one, and wonder how we ever missed them. He once said, "Let the future tell the truth and evaluate each one according to their work and accomplishments. The present is theirs. The future, for which I have really worked, is mine." Tesla did not live to see his name restored, but he knew deep down that time was not his enemy. He believed in patterns, in recurrence, in the return of ideas. He believed that every thought had a twin, somewhere in the future, waiting to awaken. And so he kept writing, not for us, but for you, for the listener now drifting off, for the dreamer who wonders what else might be possible, for the quiet soul who still believes that the stars whisper truth. Tesla spoke to the future, and the future, at last, is beginning to listen. Tesla once said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." And perhaps he did not just mean the physics, he meant the music. He believed that machines should hum in harmony, that even electricity had a tone, a soft tremble under its power, like the low note of a cello held beneath the surface of hearing. In his workshops, Tesla would listen to motors as if they were choirs. He would tune circuits the way a violinist tunes strings. He wanted light to sing, not scream. He wanted motion to flow like river water over stones. He imagined cities that ran not just efficiently, but beautifully. He saw engines that moved like breath, towers that pulsed like hearts, and homes warmed not by fire, but by resonance. He believed machines could have soul. Some nights in his lab, he would work alone, surrounded by coils, gears, spinning plates, and glowing arcs. Not chaotic, not cold, but quiet, rhythmic, almost holy. He said that every invention had a perfect frequency, a note that made it come alive. When found, it would run smoother, last longer, even seem joyful. And so he listened, not just with ears, but with mind, memory, and imagination. He listened for the music of the world, and maybe, just maybe, he heard it. There is a light that glows without heat, a kind of knowing that does not shout. Tesla carried this light, even when ignored, even when mocked, even when surrounded by doubt. He did not rage. He glowed. His brilliance was not like a sun. It was like a candle deep inside a cave, quiet, patient, steady, waiting. His ideas lived even when unbuilt. His dreams endured, even when the world could not yet hold them. He understood that true light does not seek approval. It simply shines. Tesla's work was often misjudged, his vision misunderstood. But he was not here for trophies. He was here for truth. He knew that time would unfold in spirals, that someday the world would walk the path he had once mapped in solitude. And he was right. Today, we whisper his name in reverence. We light our cities with his current. We speak wirelessly and call it normal. But it began in silence, in a small room, with a man who lit no fire but created light. He did not burn the world. He warmed it. Now, dear dreamer, we come to the end. But Tesla's dream, it does not end. It hums. In every invisible wave around you, in the soft buzz of a screen, in the lamp beside your bed, in the wireless whisper of thought, you are part of it now. As you rest, remember, this world is stitched with unseen threads, and somewhere, deep within the fabric of everything, Tesla's hum still vibrates. Close your eyes, Let go. The current is gentle. The light is soft. The dream is calling. Good night.